So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's very nice to have you all here. My name is Dora. I'm one of the organizers of Kesher, and the other one is Sebastian. You can find us both here under the name Kesher. I'll just give a brief introduction about our organization and what we do for those of you who are joining us for the first time. We started this project almost 5 years ago now, and our aim is to introduce Jewish history, Jewish culture, and also Jewish life all over the world. We invite speakers and we learn about different cities and different countries' Jewish heritage. Today is a bit of a special talk because it's not just going to be a virtual tour like we normally do, but it's going to be a bit of a half-half. So in the first 45 minutes, you're going to hear a virtual tour of Jewish Spain, where we are very, very happy to welcome Moises Hassan, who is a Spaniard of Moroccan heritage, and he's an honorary lecturer on Holocaust studies and anti-Semitism at the University Pablo de Olavide in Seville, Spain. He's also the founder of Jewish Spain Tour, a fully licensed tour operator specializing in Jewish travel inside the Iberian Peninsula and Morocco. So he's going to be the one taking you on a virtual trip just now in the next 45 minutes of Spain. And in the second half of the talk, we'll invite Patricia Mizrahi, who is also here with us already, and she's the representative of Learning Trips, Nora Kaplan Learning Trips. And she's going to share with you a trip that we are organizing in partnership with them and with Moises. This late October, early November, this coming year in 2025. And if you are interested, you will be able to hear about the itinerary and about every detail of this trip that will also be led by Moises. So we really encourage you to stay also for the second half of the trip, and perhaps after the virtual tour, you'll also feel like traveling properly to Spain in a few months. So this is going to be the program today. Of course, you'll have time to ask questions both from Moises and then later from Patricia about the trip as well. So this is the plan. But now we will dive into the history and Jewish culture of Spain. And I'll pass the floor to Moises. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll try to do a brief Q&A before the two presentations, in between the two presentations. So, Moises, it's all yours.
Okay. Okay, 1 second. No. 1 minute, I did something wrong. Yes or no? No, you don't see my screen,
Yes,
correct?
we see it. It's perfect.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello, good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Spain, and I'm so happy to be here again presenting about the Jews of Spain. This is not my best day. I have a big cold. I actually have just returned from a trip to Denver, Colorado, and I never in my entire life thought that a place could be so cold, but I found that happening in Denver, Colorado. So I'm still trying to recover myself of such a cold weather, and I'll try to do my best. So probably you hear my voice a little bit complicated and difficult, but let's try. I'll try my best. As Dora said, I was born here in Spain. My parents were born in Morocco. My grandparents were born in Morocco. One of my great grandfathers was born in Algeria, in North Africa as well. So I have a fully Sephardic Moroccan background, and I was born and raised in the city of Sevilla. And as you could listen, I lecture at the university, and now I'm also collaborating. There is a new university in Sevilla, it's a private institution owned by the Jesuits, and they do have some courses where they include some Judaism in their classes, and I'm giving them the classes about Judaism. So I'm growing my network. I'm gonna do a full tour through Jewish Spain from the arrival of the Jews in Spain 2000 years ago until present day. I will try to cover the whole history. As you all know, it's a very rich history, and today is not as rich as it used to be, but still we try. So let's see if it works. Okay. So we have two first settlements. Can you see the screen, correct? You can all see okay, good. So we know that Jews arrived in the Iberian Peninsula with the Romans. There are some archaeological evidence from the beginning of the 3rd century. So by the beginning of the 3rd century, there were some settlements, some Jewish settlements in the Iberian Peninsula. I call it the Iberian Peninsula because Spain wasn't Spain yet. Spain is the result of a whole very long process that finally ended at the beginning of the 16th century. So prior to that, we will refer in our history to the Iberian Peninsula, which today includes both Spain and Portugal. And as I said, Jews came here in this part of the world by the end of the 2nd century, beginning of the 3rd century with the Romans. At that time, this area was known as Hispania. Hispania is the name given by the Romans to this territory. And then a few years later, when the Roman Empire collapsed or started to collapse, some barbarian tribes took over the peninsula, and eventually the Visigoths managed to settle down to establish a monarchy. There were different groups coming all from Germany, what today is Germany, the Vandals, the Suavi, the Alani, and they started in 409, and finally the Visigoths, a different tribe, also from Germany, managed to take the power, and they settled down a monarchy. Originally, the center of decision, the capital of that entity, was based in the southern part of France, in Toulouse, but in 523, it was transferred to the city of Toledo, and Toledo became the head of the Visigothic monarchy. 200 years later, 711, Moors from North Africa, mostly Berbers, invaded, and they occupied the entire Iberian Peninsula. Here, I have just a few of archaeological elements that have been found in Spain to prove our history. The one on the upper right side of the screen is a tombstone from a girl. It was found already broken, so the two corners are missing, but we guess, and I guess we have to do it, it would say Ania Salomonula was a girl, and she was Jewish. As you can see at the bottom, it's written Jewish in Latin. So it shows, according to historians, the presence of an organized community, of an organized group. The tombstone on the left part of the screen, it's even older. However, this one is the tombstone of a person, Justinus. You can see at the beginning, Justinus. And the only thing that it says is Justinu from Flavianapolis. Where was Flavianapolis? Where Flavianapolis is the name of a city, which was, or today that city is Shechem, Nablus, the West Bank. So we have a person, his name was Justinus, that he was originally from Shechem. We don't know, it doesn't say that he was Jewish, though. That's why we are not so sure we should count this as a Jewish person at all, even though he came from that part of the world, but not necessarily a Jewish. And the zinc that we have at the bottom, it's a bit newer. It's from the 4th or 5th century, beginning of the 5th century, and it's called the trilingual sink because it has inscriptions or motifs. We have the menorah here and the birds, and it's not a very good picture, but it has some other symbols on the side. So the inscription is in Latin, in Greek, and in Hebrew. Okay, so these are like the oldest archaeological remains that we have about Jewish presence back in the Iberian Peninsula 2,000 years ago. But besides, we have some texts. So it's not only stones that show us presence of the Jewish presence within the Iberian Peninsula, but also we have some text. And this one probably for me is the most important. It's called the Council of Elvira. Elvira was a city located in the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula near Granada. Today it doesn't exist. The Roman name for the city of Elvira was Iliberris. Sorry, it was called Iliberris, and there was a council which was celebrated in the year 306, and it contains some articles. And I remark the year. I know that it's not easy to get the dates in your mind, but it's important at this point because 306 still the Roman Empire is not Christian. It's still pagan. So we're in a moment. It's about to become a Christian entity, but remember it was Constantine, the one that stopped or banned persecution of Christians. But until that moment, the Romans were also persecuting Christians. But in 306, this meeting in the city of Elvira, Iliberris, gathered, I think there were like 19 bishops, and a little text was released. And the text originally, it was written in Latin, as you can imagine, but we have here a transcription of this text, and we see that there are 4 canons, 4 articles that do specifically refer to the Jews, right? So for me, the 4 mentions and go over them: heretics, if they're unwilling to change over to the Catholic Church, and not to have Catholic girls given to them in marriage. Landlords are warned not to allow the crops which they have received from God, which an act of thanksgiving, to be blessed by the Jews. So there is here a banning of Jews blessing crops that are owned by non-Jewish owners. Or even the next one, it says, if any of the clergy or the faithful eats with Jews, he shall be kept from communion in order that he be corrected as he should. So it's a prohibition to share a meal with the Jew. And even the last mention, one of the faithful. So if a Christian who is married commits adultery with a Jewish or pagan woman, he shall be cut off communion. So as we can see, at this point, the question is, how many Jews were here by then? And the answer is not easy, but it's at some point clear. I would say enough to be a concern for the religious authorities. Okay, so we cannot say a number. That would be impossible to say how many Jews were here by then, but definitely not 1, 2, or 3 Jews, but many more. And that's why the church is trying to protect itself from the external influence. So that's why all these barriers and borders try to avoid contact between Jews and non-Jews. Okay, so the truth is that by the beginning of the 4th century, Jewish presence in the Iberian Peninsula must have been big enough to be a concern from the authorities, and that's why they decided to make all these regulations against the Jews. 711, that's another key moment in our history. This is when Islam entered in the Iberian Peninsula. Islam started at the very bottom here in Gibraltar, which stands for Jebel Tariq, the rock of Tariq. Tariq ibn Sa'id was the head of the Berbers that came from Morocco and occupied the whole Iberian Peninsula. As you probably know, Islam is the the newest of the three main religions. So Islam officially was created in 622 when Muhammad, the prophet, escaped from Mecca and goes to the city of Medina in Saudi Arabia, and this is officially taken as the beginning of Islam. So as you can see in the map, Islam created in the Iberian Peninsula, spread out towards east, but also towards west. And there was a moment that they reached the very end of Africa, the most western part, and jumped in the Iberian Peninsula into Europe. The distance between both continents is only 8 miles. So as you can imagine, it was an easy jump. And Muslims went all the way up till the Pyrenees. There is something that I like to mention, that when I say, sometimes I would say Arabs, sometimes I would say Muslims, Berbers. Keep in mind that these are like different concepts. So the religion is Islam, and the term Arab actually do refer to a certain part of the world. So what today is Saudi Arabia, the Arabs came from that part of the world, and of course they embraced Islam, as the Persians did. The Persians did embrace Islam, but they are not Arabs, they are Persians. Or the Berbers. The Berbers were the inhabitants of North Africa, and they also embraced Islam. And, or for example, the Turkish, the Ottomans, they are not Arabs. Actually, it's a big insult to a Turkish to refer himself as an Arab, because he's not. He's an Ottoman. However, they also practice Islam. So many different groups actually came here into the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, they all practice Islam, and they were from different parts of the world. And actually, the Arabs didn't like Berbers. The invaders were the Berbers that came in 711. Tariq ibn Said was a Berber, and they were not very much liked by the Arabs, because they consider Berbers very low class people, good for fighting, good warriors, good fighters, but not good, very good Muslims. Okay, so, and this is one, they all, let's say they all came to Spain, and there were different moments. So let's go back for a second. This area in the north wasn't taken by the Muslims ever. So the original history of Spain says that the Visigoths, they were Christians, they were able to resist the attack of the Muslims in that part of the country, and that section was never taken by the Muslims. That remained in the hands of the Christians. The Muslims, they crossed actually the Pyrenees here and went into France, and actually they reached the city of Poitiers. So approximately 1/3 of what today is France was also occupied by the Muslims. Okay, so of course the Christians in the north started to push down a little bit, and little by little they recaptured the territory. This is a process that we call reconquista, reconquest. So it's a political term. Today it's of course under discussion, but the idea that lies behind is that the Iberian Peninsula originally was a Christian land. Muslims invaded, therefore Christians did have the right to take it back. That's why we refer to that period of our history as Reconquista. And Reconquista, it's a very, very slow process. Reconquista took almost 800 years to be completed. Just have here 4 moments of this process. Remember, the Muslims started in 711. By 866, this section was already taken by the Christians. By 1100s, half of the peninsula is back into Christian hands. In 1212, more than half, almost 2/3 are taken back. And eventually, 1492, is the end, is when the kingdom of Granada, the last stronghold down here in the south, surrendered the the Christians, and the whole peninsula is is controlled by the Christians. We have to go over the good years. When Muslims came here in 711, they found a little Jewish population. What had happened with the Jews here during the early times? We mentioned the 4th century with the Council of Vera. What happened next? Well, when the Visigoths came here in the 5th century, sorry, they didn't treat the Jews very well. And as the years went by, Jews were worse and worse treated until they were put under slavery. By the end of the 7th century, Jews were slaves to the Visigoths. So it's not difficult to understand that when the Muslims came here in 711, for the Jews, this was a moment of liberation. They thought probably that life couldn't get worse. They were slaves already, all the property had been confiscated, etc. And that's true. Muslims did not treat the Jews as bad as they had been treated by the Muslims. Jews were given the category of dhimmis. A dhimmi technically means second-class citizen, a protected minority at some point. To be a dhimmi, though, was not a good thing. So there was discrimination against dhimmis. However, Muslims understood that Jews, both Jews and Christians, they should be called people of the book. The three of us come from the same origins, and therefore Jews and Christians in their society, they have like a special status. But again, it is not that they were loved. It is not that they were fully accepted. No, they were just tolerated. So they were not persecuted. And at some point, they could reach up to some limited rights. For example, synagogues at some point, or places to worship, were permitted as long as they were never higher than a mosque. Okay, so even though this has been idealized over the years by many scholars and writers, the truth is that to be a dhimmi was not a good thing. However, it wasn't as bad as being a slave. Okay, that's why we tend to idealize this moment. And of course, that Jews as a minority, they became part of that society, which, among other things, brought education. The Arabs brought some type of enlightenment into the life here. This is actually the moment of what we call the dark ages of Christianity, which is what is going on in most of Europe. However, in the Iberian Peninsula, situation is a bit different, and the reason is simple. Arabs are very much into culture, into education, and Jews actually became part of that society as dhimmis, of course, as second-class citizens, but at some point they were. So Arabs, they encourage the study of art and literature and mathematics and medicine and astronomy and philosophy and all these subject matters. And Jews that were living among the Muslims were part of that society. I've just given a few names of scholars that probably you've heard of before, like Dai ibn Shaprut. He was a physician, actually was the physician of the Caliph, and also was a diplomat and a minister. Or Shmuel ibn Nagrela, Shmuel Hanagir, who was a Talmudic scholar, a philologist, a politician, and the most important, as a poet. Poetry was one of those, the influencers at the time were the poets, okay? Or Abraham ibn Ezra or Moshe ibn Ezra, well, the Talmudic scholar, philosopher, grammarian, mathematicians, it was an astronomist. And in fact, just as a curiosity, there is one crater in the moon that is named after Abraham ibn Ezra. Okay, so it was such an important that even today, one of the craters of the moon is named after a Talmudic scholar from Spain. Or Shlomo Ibn Gabirol. Shlomo Ibn Gabirol, he was a poet and a philosopher. He lived at the beginning of the 11th century. Here we have some other names. I'll go fast. Ibn Gayat or Al-Fasi. Al-Fasi originally was born in Fez. That's why his surname Al-Fasi, from Fez. Itzhak from Fez, or Yehuda Halevi, the poet, the first Zionist poet. Probably you've heard his main poem. It says, my heart is in the east while my body is in the west. So he always dreamt of going to the land of Israel. And Ibn Megash, who was the head of the yeshiva in Lucena in Spain, in the Iberian Peninsula, they were the two most important yeshivot in the 11th century that replaced the Talmudic academies in Babylon. By the 8th, 9th century, the academies in Babylon, the Talmudic academies in Babylon started to decline, and the Talmudic academies in the Iberian Peninsula started to flourish. One was in Cordoba, the other one was in Lucena. And probably the most important, that's what I kept him from the end, which is the Rambam, Maimonides. However, we have to admit that Maimonides is not part of what we call the Golden Age. So the Golden Age is that good period that goes between the, let's say, 929, beginning of the 10th century, until 1148, the invasion of the Almohads. That's what we call that Golden Age. And then situation became not so good for the Jews. And this is the moment when our Maimonides comes into the scene, right? Maimonides, he was born in Cordoba. However, he left the city of Cordoba in 1148. Why? Because of the Almohad invasion. Almohads were fanatical Muslims that came into the Iberian Peninsula in 1148 and ended that, let's say, nice society that Muslims had built up, okay? And the Muslims are no longer tolerant, but they became very intolerant. And this is the moment when the Rambam was born. That's why he shouldn't be considered part of the so-called Golden Age, but probably is a product of this Golden Age. He was possible because the society that Muslims had created before. And I just wrote there many of the books. He was like the biggest scholar in those times, and still today he's considered one of the biggest. There is a said which is Moshe ad Moshe lo kan ke Moshe. From Moses to Moses, no one like Moses. So from Moshe Rabbeinu to Moshe ben Maimon, there was no one like those two. And again, he only lived 13 years in Cordoba. He left as a child, and he eventually ended up settling in Egypt. So that's the truth, that where he really developed all his career was in Egypt, in the court of Saladin, the Sultan. And I want you also not just to hear names, but also to see patrimony, some heritage. There isn't that many, unfortunately. Well, it's been 700 years, 800 years since, and most of the patrimony, most of the heritage is gone, but still there are some places that can be visited when we travel all throughout Spain. Here we have the mikveh. There is a mikveh in Besalú. Besalú is a city in the very north of Spain, north of Barcelona, and this mikveh was discovered, I think it was 1964. I should say that it's probably the only one that exists now in Spain, even though some cities claim to have found a mikveh in their places. Well, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. Not every pool underneath happens to be a mikveh. This one in Besalú, it really is, and it has been studied how the water used to get in, etc., etc. And it's one of the wonders of Spain. Toledo. Who hasn't heard about Toledo? Toledo, Spain, not Toledo, Ohio. Okay. Toledo was for many years the city. People like to refer to Toledo as the city of the three cultures. It's not exactly true. Probably a bit of the three religions. Culture was always the same. And in Toledo, we can visit one of the most fascinating buildings is the synagogue of El Tránsito, which was built by Shmuel Halevi Abulafia. You can see his portrait on the left-hand side of the screen. That's Shmuel Halevi Abulafia. Shmuel Halevi Abulafia, he was the royal treasurer to a Christian king, to Pedro I. Shmuel Halevi, he lived in the 14th century. He was a very powerful man, and he managed to build his own synagogue that we can see in the other two images. Today, this is one of the highlights of Jewish Spain, and because this building houses the Sephardic Museum of Spain. So in our trip, we will be visiting the synagogue of Shmuel Halevi. We will be able to see all the Hebrew inscriptions still preserved in the ceiling and in the walls. Another synagogue in Toledo, Santa Maria la Blanca. The truth is that Toledo has 2 out of the 3 medieval synagogues that have been preserved in Spain over the years, right? There are 2 in Toledo and 1 in Cordoba, which is our next slide. These are some images of the synagogue in Cordoba. People love to call this place the Rambam Synagogue. The truth is that Rambam never stood a foot in that place because it was built some 150 years after he left Spain. Okay, so the synagogue is in Cordoba. Rambam Maimonides was born in Cordoba, but he was never ever in this place. And again, we have some Hebrew inscriptions in the walls, which we'll be able to see when we travel there in October. And again, the same name, Santa Maria la Blanca. Remember, we just saw Santa Maria la Blanca in Toledo, and we have a Santa Maria la Blanca in Sevilla. Santa Maria la Blanca, Saint Mary the White. This is what it says. This is a church in Sevilla, and this church used to be a synagogue. And the truth is that remains were found not so many years ago. Here you can see some of the remains behind one of the paintings. This came out to the light in 2012. It's when some artwork was removed and some elements of the old synagogue were found. And very recently, actually last year, the Haran HaKodesh was found behind the altarpiece of the church. Unfortunately, it is not possible to see it because it has been covered up again. But we'll have some pictures of the Haran HaKodesh that was found in Santa Maria Blanca a few months ago. These are some of the elements that were found behind the altarpiece of the church today. It's a current church. It functions as a church. We have the city of Lucena. Lucena is where the biggest cemetery has been found. It's in between, Lucena is between between Cordoba and Granada. And in 2010, 2011, 340 graves were found in the outskirts of the city. Okay. Barcelona. Well, in Barcelona, actually we have here Barcelona and Girona. This is an image. Oops. This is an image from Girona. And this is also in Barcelona. We can see in some of the buildings in Barcelona some Hebrew inscriptions. So it seems that the stones were stolen from the Jewish cemetery, and they were used to build some of the buildings. And still today, when you walk through the narrow lanes of the Jewish quarter in Barcelona, we will find some stones in the building with Hebrew inscriptions, and these stones were taken from the cemetery. And This is a map of synagogues that existed in Spain in the Middle Ages. So as you can see, there were Jews everywhere. There were communities all throughout the Iberian Peninsula. And this map shows, you see, on the top it says sinagogas hispanas. So synagogues. A synagogue means a community, not only Jewish presence, but an organized Jewish presence, an aljama, a kahal, a community, okay? And as you can see, they were all throughout the Iberian Peninsula. But this all came to an end. Unfortunately, 1492 is like the very key year. 1492 is the moment when Granada was surrendered to the Christians, 2nd of January of 1492, after almost 800 years of control, of Muslim control in the Iberian Peninsula. Finally, Granada, the last stronghold, surrendered to the Christians, and this marked an end, 2nd of January of 1492. 3 months later, in the Alhambra, that we will be visiting in October, the decree of expulsion was signed. The decree of expulsion was signed the 31st of March of that same year. And the decree of expulsion said clearly, we resolve to order the said Jews and Jewishes of our kingdoms to depart and never to return or come back to them. So after a presence of over 1400 years, Jews were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula. And the reason is also written on the decree. The reason was that they were not Christians. Jews were at some point all throughout history trying or persuade to convert. Some of them converted. Some of those that converted pretended that had converted, but they kept practicing their religion in secret, and that was considered a crime by the Catholic monarchs, Isabel and Ferdinand, and therefore they decree to expel Jews from the Iberian Peninsula and never to return. This is a place in Sevilla, the headquarters of the Inquisition. Probably all of you have heard about the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. It's different. The Inquisition, originally, the Inquisition was created in the 12th century in the south of France, and it was under the direct authority of the Church, of the Pope. However, the Spanish Inquisition is created much later, it's in 1478, and is under the authority of the Spanish monarchy, okay? And the headquarters of that Inquisition were placed in my hometown, in Sevilla. This is this is one of the narrow streets nearby. It's called the Alley of the Inquisition. Why? Because this Castillo de San Jorge were the headquarters of the Inquisition, and these are some of the remains that can be found underneath. Here we see images of Toledo, Toledo, Madrid, and Sevilla. Why these three places? Well, these are the places where the auto de fe would be celebrated by the Inquisition. The auto de fe, remember, was the legal process. Conversos were arrested by the Inquisition, and they were tried. They were publicly tried. So the trials were public. That's why they normally used to take place in big parts of the city, because the message was clear. Everyone that has converted and has embraced the true faith, Catholicism, is not supposed to practice his former religion in secret, and if he does so, he can be burned on the stake. Okay, that's why these trials were public, and that was the intention, to send out a message. So this is the Plaza del Zócalo Ver in Toledo, where the Inquisition trials would take place. This is Plaza Mayor in Madrid. This is Plaza de San Francisco in Sevilla. Just keep one thing I'd like to remark. The burning would not take place inside the cities. The trials were taking place in all these places, normally the most central square in those cities, and then the burning of those that were sentenced to die would happen in the outskirts of the city. Here we have some representations. Again, this is Plaza Mayor. This is a very famous auto de fe in 1674. Even the king himself attended. Okay, king, I think it was Charles II. He attended this auto de fe. And this is a map of the different paths that the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula took after the expulsion. Actually, that's why they started to call themselves Sephardic, because they came from Sepharad, Spain. Okay, so the term Sephardic really means Spaniard. So the Jews that were kicked out from Spain, they started to refer to themselves as Sephardic Spaniards, and they actually took three main directions: Portugal, or North Africa, or the Ottoman Empire, as you can see. The truth is that the Jews that went from Spain to Portugal, at the beginning it was like a nice option, but they were kicked out from Portugal a few years later. And that's why some of them, actually not them, but their descendants, a new generation, is the one that goes up to the Netherlands and eventually to the Dutch colonies in the Caribbean, Recife, Suriname, etc. Okay, so a significant number goes to Portugal, another goes to Morocco, North Africa. Perhaps my family was among them, who knows? And another group ended within the Ottoman Empire, which is actually the only place that they were accepted at some point. Okay, they were welcomed by the Ottomans, by the Turkish. And here we have a Saloniki. Thessaloniki, in what today is Greece, became like the center of Sephardic Judaism. I mean, it really, Judaism really flourished again with the Sephardim in the city of Thessaloniki. And here we have some images of synagogues in Thessaloniki. Just by the beginning of the 20th century, is half of the population of Thessaloniki were Sephardim. Okay, so just unfortunately, most of the Sephardim in Greece were perished during the Holocaust, exterminated by the Nazis. And one of the things that Sephardic Jews brought was Ladino, the Sephardic language. So Ladino, it's a Roman language that derived from Old Spanish. It is not only Old Spanish, and some people like to say, no, Ladino is much more complicated than that. Ladino has got words from Turkish and from Bulgarian and from Arabic and from Hebrew, etc. So this is Ladino. And originally, Ladino was written with Hebrew characters. It's very much like Yiddish. Yiddish is at some point very German, and it's written with Hebrew letters. This is the same in Ladino. Okay, we can say Judeo-Espanol. Okay, Judeo-Spanish. Okay. And of course, there is a return back. It took 350 years for the Jews to start returning back to Spain, because it's only 1834 when the Inquisition is abolished. Inquisition functions in Spain for over 350 years and was abolished only in 1834. By 1855, Mr. Weisweiler and Bauer, they represented the Rothschild Bank in Spain. They were like the two first public Jews back in Spain. A few years later, in 1961, there is arrival of the first Jews to my hometown, by Sevilla. Sevilla has the oldest of the modern Jewish communities, and they came from Morocco. It was not only until 8 years later when another religions were permitted, though. So there were some Jews that came here and they settled down in the city very quietly, and only in 1869 is when Spain permits, according to its constitution, the practice of other religions besides Catholicism. In 76, though, there is like a return back to Catholicism as the official religion of Spain. However, the gates had been already opened. Okay, so this is how Jews were able to maintain themselves in Spain. And some other facts. 1914, the first synagogue in Spain is opened in the city of Sevilla. 3 years later, Madrid, and 1 year later in Barcelona. In 1924 is the decree of Primo de Rivera giving citizenship to Sephardic. I mean, everyone knows about what happened in 2015 when the Spanish government started to give Spanish citizenship to Sephardic Jews, but the first time that this was done, it was in 1924 when the Sephardic Jews were given citizenship in Spain. And between 39 and 45, during World War II, some Spanish diplomats helped Jews to escape from Nazi terror in Europe. 67, under Franco, is when it was promulgated the law for freedom of religion. And in 69, the decree of expulsion was officially abolished by Franco, actually. So there was it was not a public ceremony, though, but Franco, by that time, he sent a letter to the head of the Jews in Spain by then, Mr. Max Bazin, saying that the decree of expulsion was officially abolished. And in 1992, 500 years after the expulsion, His Majesty the King of Spain, he visited the synagogue in Madrid and he apologized for the expulsion of the Jews in 1492. The bottom, I have the picture of Angel Sanz-Briz, who was not the ambassador, because he was not ambassador in Budapest, that he saved over 5,000 Jews during World War II. He's one of the righteous of the nations. And as I said, the return to Spain, the 21st century. Since 2008, there's a public celebration of Hanukkah in the streets of Madrid. You know, this is a Chabad issue that they do it all over the world, and they started doing it in Spain. And still, every year, now, I think they do it in Madrid, in Malaga, and in Barcelona. So it's like growing. And as I mentioned before, 2015, Spain offered citizenship to Sephardic Jews. Unfortunately, this had to be done before 2018. So for 4 years, Sephardim could apply for Spanish citizenship, not anymore. However, there are over 100,000 files pending to be processed. And this is just something from my hometown, from Sevilla. Remember, Sevilla has the oldest of the modern Jewish communities. But besides, if you see down here, this document is 1966. And remember that freedom of religion only came in 1967. And the reason is that in 1966, my father in Sevilla, he managed to get permission from the civil governor of the city to gather. My father came into Sevilla in 1963, and there were some Jews living in Sevilla, and they used to meet at some point at someone's house. But it was, remember, Franco's time, so it was not easy to have gatherings. Okay, you had to ask for permission every time that you were going to gather more than 3 people to make a reunion. So my father, he sent a letter to the civil governor of the city of Sevilla, who actually had been a classmate of him at the university, and asking for permission to meet on a regular basis at someone's house, in the house of Mesod Medina. I remember, I was a kid, I was born in 67, and I remember going to this place where Jews would meet on Friday night and main holidays, mainly Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then 2 years later, once that the law of freedom of religion was passed on, the Jewish community of Sevilla was officially established. Actually, here it's said in Comunidad Israelita de Sevilla, Jewish community of Sevilla. Some images, okay, of modern synagogues in the southern part of Spain. Here we have Torremolinos in Costa del Sol. This is Sevilla. This is Malaga, and this is Marbella. These are like modern synagogues in the southern part of Spain. And as you can see, Jewish life is still around. Actually, this is my wedding that took place in Sevilla. I got married in 2007 in the city of Sevilla. So that's where we built a chuppah. And the rabbi from Barcelona, he's the one that came to perform the ceremony. Actually, well, she's my sister. She lives in Israel. She married in Israel. But she, even though the groom was from was Ashkenazi, had a Polish background, they celebrated the previous night in the Moroccan way, and that's what they have in the hands. What they have is henna, this color that they. So this is a very Moroccan tradition. And okay, this is my bar mitzvah in Israel. I didn't want to do my bar mitzvah in Sevilla, so I was lucky enough to go to Israel with the family. And recent moments in my life. So the birth of my son Simon, one of our visits to Israel, to Jerusalem, his first Hanukkah lighting candles, and this in 2014. Every year, the 27th of January, the whole Europe celebrates or commemorates. They don't celebrate; they commemorate the liberation of Auschwitz. And there is a ceremony normally held in the parliaments, okay, where they light candles. In 2014, I was invited to light one of the candles, and I decided to do it with my son Simon. And this is what this image is about. So now every year, every country in Europe commemorates the liberation of Auschwitz. This is the bar mitzvah of my son. So I have my bar mitzvah in Jerusalem. However, the bar mitzvah of my son was in Sevilla. It was right after COVID, and that's why you can see all the people with the masks. Okay, but we managed to celebrate there in a hotel in Sevilla, and that's it. I think that this is all for now. Okay, it was 46 minutes. I didn't do bad. I'm sure that you will have many questions that have arisen. I don't know how much time we have for questions. Sebastian, Dora, please
Yes,
let
so
us
we
know.
will do a couple of questions and then we will pass the word to Patricia to do the second part of the presentation. And then if we have time after that, then we can do a few more questions that came in. So I'll just read really a couple from the chat. You mentioned that Jews arrived to the Iberian Peninsula in the 2nd century. Can you say a bit more where they came from or on what route they came from? Did they go through Italy, or what was who were the people, where they came from?
Okay. Remember Romans destroyed the Second Temple in the year 70. However, there was still some Jewish presence in that part of the world for several years. 132, it's also a key year, is the revolt or Bar Kokhba, which lasted 3 years. There's a big revolution. He proclaimed himself the Messiah, etc. And it is right after this revolution in 135 when Romans really wanted to end up Jewish life. So one of the things that Emperor Hadrian, by the way, born in Sevilla, did was change the name of the city of Jerusalem. So she renamed the city as Aelia Capitolina, which it was an attempt to erase and to disconnect Jewish life with and the Jews in that part of the world. And this is when the big diaspora started, actually. So the Gola really started after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135. And at some point, some Jews went east, Babylon. Some others came west through Italy, but also through the north of Africa. There is Jewish presence in the north of Africa since Roman times. So probably in caravans and traders, they went all the way. We know that also some Jews settled down in Greece and as I say, in Italy. By the way, the Jews from Italy, they call themselves Roman Jews because they came directly from Israel and didn't come through Spain, right? So the roots were several. They came through North Africa, but also through the continent, through Greece, Italy, and Spain was the Iberian Peninsula, sorry, was the end of the known world by then. There was nothing further west. Remember that America was there, but we didn't know that it was there. Okay, so this is how Jews ended in this part of the world.
Thank you. Very quick question. The map you showed with all the different Jewish settlements in Spain, what year was that from?
Approximately 1300s.
Okay.
The second half of the 13,300, 13 to 1350, let's say.
Thank you very much. And I'll read one more and then I'll pass it on to Patricia. A question about it's a clarifying question. The requirement to ask for permission to gather as more than 3 Jews that your father wrote letter in response, was that a requirement across the whole of Spain? And because you mentioned that there were already some synagogues in other parts of Spain before the 1960s.
Okay, no, don't forget that Franco established a dictatorship. So gathering was not free at some point. They thought that if you had some political issues behind, and that's why the permission had to be requested. So, and this is something I remember. I mean, my father told me, I wasn't having born yet, but in Madrid, my father studied in Madrid in the 50s, and they didn't have a synagogue. And for the holidays, they would rent a hotel, and of course, they had to apply for a permission to celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and in this hotel. Okay, so this was something not only for the Jews. At that point, Jews were tolerated, and this is the concept. So they were not persecuted. However, official religion of Spain was Roman Catholicism. So, for example, Protestants did not have the rights that the Catholics had. Okay, so at this point, this permission that my father received was rather than asking every time that they wanted to meet. They said, okay, so in this permit, the governor said, okay, you can every Friday night, okay, every Friday night you have the permission to meet for praying, for davening.
Thank you. There are super interesting questions in the chat, but unfortunately now we need to continue. But if we have time, we'll come back to you. So now I will pass the word to Patricia, who is going to share with us the details of the trip that is coming up this October, November in 2025, where Moises and together with Patricia, they're going to lead this amazing tour of Jewish heritage of Spain. So Patricia, please share with us the details of this trip.
Thank you, Dora. Thank you so much, Moises. It's always very interesting to hear the history of Spain, the Jewish Spain from you. As Dora said, we organized this tour with Moises. I mean, Moises is actually we have been curating this trip, this tour with him, and this is gonna be the 5th time that we organize it. This year, our tour is gonna be between October and November, October 26th and November 6th. 12 nights and 10 days of tour. So because we are planning to include hotel the night before the tour start and the night after the tour finish. We organize, I mean, our groups are very small, up to 24 people. As I said, we actually curate this itinerary. We hear all the reviews that we have from year to year, and actually we improve every year our tours. And Moises, myself, or Alec, and Alexis, which is not here, she's also part of learning trips. We accompany the group, and we work with specialized tour guides who speak very well English in local tour guides in Spain. As I said, Moises is the leader of the tour, and we gather in a special, I mean, 4 or 5-star hotels in the center of the cities. Remember that hotels in Spain, in Europe in general, are smaller than in America, but they're very comfortable. And even though we cannot provide kosher meals, it's a vegetarian option, and we try to keep kosher, and also we don't organize tours by car or anything that it's a transport during Shabbat. We're gonna visit during those 10 days 7 cities, so it's gonna be very packed. We're gonna travel through Barcelona and Girona. We're gonna visit all the places that Moises show us: Granada, Córdoba, Seville, Toledo, and Madrid. We're gonna visit like the main places where the Jewish history, we can at least see some of the things, but actually where the main Jewish history, it's there, no? As I said, we start in Barcelona the day before, Sunday, October 26th. You arrive in Barcelona, you have that night at hotel, and the next day we're gonna start the tour with a panoramic tour of Barcelona. We're gonna meet not only Jewish sites, which is the main part of the tour, but also we're gonna have the opportunity to meet special places. I mean, like the highlights of each city that we're gonna visit. We're gonna have a welcome dinner. Next day, we're gonna travel to Girona. We're gonna visit the Cal of Girona and the Jewish museum. And then we're gonna travel to Figueres to the Dalí Museum. I mean, completely different, but it's also a guided tour. And we're gonna return to Barcelona. We're gonna stay that night there. The fourth day, we're gonna have a guided tour, guided visit to the Sagrada Familia, which is very, very, very interesting. And that afternoon, we're gonna have a flight to Granada. And in Granada, we're gonna have a group dinner. In Granada, we're gonna visit also a guided tour of the Alhambra. It's amazing, and we're gonna understand a little bit more of the history that Moises explained us before. And then in Granada, we're only gonna stay one night, and then we're gonna travel to Cordoba, where we're gonna spend also Friday and Shabbat. On Friday, we're gonna visit the mosque of Cordoba, which is also very impressive, and then we're gonna have the tour of the Jewish quarter, and we're gonna have a special visit to the Casa Sephardic with the I don't remember his name, but it's the Moises. What is the name?
Sebastian.
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 He's gonna make us a special tour of Casa Sephardic, and actually Casa Sephardic is in front of the synagogue that Moises showed before. We're gonna also visit the synagogue. We're gonna have there our own Kabbalat Shabbat, and then we're gonna have a group dinner together in a kosher. I think that's the only kosher place that we can actually offer, and we're gonna have a Shabbat dinner there. And that Saturday, it's free day. We will give you options that you can do. We're also gonna, it's optional, absolutely. If you wanna have a walking tour with us, visit a little bit of the city. You can also go to the bath, and I mean, it's the different activities that you can do. We will give you and guide you what you can do that day, and then for those who want to join, we're gonna have a group Avdalah in the evening. And the next morning, on Sunday, we're gonna travel to Seville, to Moises city. We're gonna have there, we're gonna visit the Plaza España, which actually was built with a different place, I mean, like showing the different places of Spain. And we're gonna have like a explanation there with Moises, and then we're gonna visit the gardens of the Alcázar, which is also included in the tour. We're gonna have a flamenco show, which is very typical Andalusian activity. And the next day, we're gonna have the tour with Moises of the Jewish quarter in Seville, and free afternoon, group dinner, and the next morning we're gonna travel to Madrid. And we're gonna have the panoramic tour in Madrid. We're gonna visit a little bit, free time, because I'm running, but please ask me all the questions that you have. You also have this itinerary on our website. The 11th day, we're gonna visit Toledo. This is gonna be a full day of the tour, the Jewish tour in Toledo. We're gonna walk the streets of Toledo. We're gonna enter the different synagogue, church, all this city of the Jewish quarter tours that we're gonna have are with specialized tour guides. In Seville, it's gonna be with Moises, but in the other cities, only people that are very, very, very good tour guides. We have worked with them before, and we only have good reviews from our past participants. And that night we're gonna have our farewell group dinner. This night is included in the itinerary, I mean the hotel. And next morning, it's those who go back to your places. We're gonna say bye. Those who wanna stay longer in Madrid, we can help you to book the hotel room for longer days. And so important details, as I said before, the hotels are located in the city centers, and rooms are not big, but they're very, very, very comfortable, between 4 and 5 stars. All the hotels include the breakfast. Group meals, we're gonna have 6 group meals, and then other ones you can choose on your own, where you will have enough time to have your lunch or dinner on your own. We give you options on the itinerary, and on the free time, even though the itinerary seems very packed, you're gonna have free afternoons or mornings, so you can or rest or go on your own, go shopping, visit some museums. We will give you also options in each city what you can do. As I said, kashrut and Shabbat. I mean, kosher is almost impossible to offer in Spain, but we will give you vegetarian options. We also ask when you register, we ask you if you have any restrictions, so we take that in account for our group meals. And also on the day of Shabbat, we will not include any taxi, bus, train, anything transport. The price of the tour is in euros, because we pay everything in euros. The exchange is today, probably, I mean, at the moment that if you pay, the rate is different. But we have an early bird price until June 18. This is an offer that we have until then. Then the general price is 5,950 euros, which is like $6,200 approx. And we have the option of single supplement. If you travel on your own, but you prefer, if we share a room with someone, we can help. If there's another participant who wants to share a room, we can help you on that. And I know it's a big list, but this is the things that the price include, which is all the accommodations with breakfast, the airfare between Barcelona and Granada, with a luggage that you can check for 25 kilos. We will give you also the details. The high-speed train from Seville to Madrid, touring in comfortable air-conditioned buses between the different cities, 6 group meals together, including Shabbat dinner, entrance to the museums and shows that I said before, and being with Moisés, myself, and Alexis during the entire trip. We're gonna be with the group and all the time and help you with anything. And Moisés can answer all your questions during the tour, which is actually, it's very interesting, because it's not only during the guided tour, but also during the meals or on the bus, or we share a lot of information, we talk a lot, so it's very interesting. The things that are not included in the price is the airfare from Canada, US, different places where you're from, to Spain, the ground transportation from and to the airport. And this is very important, the health insurance, travel and health insurance. We encourage you to acquire from your own. Additional luggage if you want to bring something else to the airplane between Barcelona and Granada. The optional attractions, the extra expenses as laundry, beverage, and we ask for tips in cash for, I mean, tour guides and people from the hotels and everything. So these are our contacts. Alexis she couldn't connect, join us today, but she is on the email, on the phone. She's located, I forgot to say, I'm in Spain. I live in Valencia, but Alexis lives in Seattle, and she can answer, you can have a call with her if you have any questions, or you can send us an email. Doesn't matter, me or her, we can ask. And if you have any question now, please feel free to ask anything you have.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So now I'm going to read some
Yes.
questions that are related
Stop sharing.
to the trip. And then if we have still time, I will read a few more questions for Moises from the beginning of the presentation. So just to answer already one of the questions that for 2025, there are absolutely still places. So this is the information we are sharing about today. So if you're thinking of traveling this October, November, then you can be in touch with Patricia, with Alexis, and they will be very, very happy to answer all your questions, to speak with you and let you know about all the details. And of course, tomorrow, as always, we will send out a follow-up information that will include both the recording of this talk, as well as all the information on the website about the trip to Spain. And I just want to also mention that although it's not the topic of today, but there is also a trip happening to the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia this June, which we will also share with you. So those of you who are interested in traveling already in June, and maybe perhaps also to Spain later, you will receive the information of both of these trips. So one of the questions that came in regarding this trip to Spain, if you get many solo travelers.
We do have a few of them. Actually, every year we manage to pair. I mean, if it's sharing rooms, we manage to pair. I think it's a proportion of 70% couples and 30% single as solo travels. And that's very interesting. And also, I forgot to say, but the age, it's senior. I mean, this itinerary is for senior people. It's a senior pace. I mean, it's we take in account bathroom stops, the rhythm of the tour. So yes, this proportion is like 70% couples and 30% solo or single travels.
Thank you.
I mix the answer, but yeah.
No, perfect. It's great. Thank you so much. And so if there are any more questions about the tour, do you have to be Jewish to go on the tour?
No, you don't have to be Jewish. I mean, we don't ask the Jewish certificate. We actually have a lot of mixed couples, and we haven't had anyone that's non-Jewish, but we are not close to that. So we don't actually, if you're interested in the Jewish history of Spain, we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Are you planning to have trips to Morocco?
Good question. We are starting to talk with Moises, and our idea, I mean, it's not the official, I can say it's out of the record, but we are planning to organize one in April 2026 to Morocco. So we'll keep you posted on that trip. I have to arrange the details with Moises in the next couple of weeks, but yeah.
Thank you. While we are waiting for more questions about the tour, I'll ask one from before. How many Jews live in Spain today, and where is the greatest concentration? How many Jews live in Sevilla? So if you can give a little information about the number of Jews in the different cities that will be visited.
Numbers are always the most complicated question because there is not a census, as you can imagine. Number of Jews in Spain nowadays is somehow between, I would say, 30,000 to 45,000. I don't think there are 45,000. That's the official figures provided by the Federation, but I don't think there are that many. And they're mostly located in Madrid and Barcelona. Actually, Barcelona has got a big Israeli community nowadays. It's quite interesting. So the main concentrations of Jews, the main concentration is in Barcelona and Madrid, but also in the south, in Costa del Sol, in the area of Malaga, Marbella, and Torremolinos, there are also a significant number of Jews. And then in Valencia, there is a community, and in Benidorm, near Alicante, a community, and the Canary Island. Okay, so the number, again, between 30 and 45,000. And in Sevilla, how many do we have in Sevilla? Approximately 100 and, I don't know, 120, 130 Jews who live in the city of Sevilla. We have two communities, two congregations. One is Moroccan traditional. Still, most of the Judaism in Spain is Moroccan, okay, very traditional. Not what in the States you would call Orthodox, but traditional. And so in Sevilla, we have one Moroccan and one Reform. So 120, 130 Jews approximately in the city.
Thank you. Another question also to you, Moises. Why was Portugal separated into a separate country?
Okay, Portugal became, don't forget that Portugal was also taking over what today's Portugal was occupied by the Muslims, right? And then Portugal became as, I think it was a county. There was an earl. It was the earl of that region was called Portugal. And then he managed to get, he was the son of the King of Leon. I don't remember exactly which one, but it must have been somewhere around the late 12th century. And this earl was the head of that, so the lord of the land, and eventually he managed to get recognition from the Pope, and this is when Portugal became a different country by itself. There have been several attempts to join both kingdoms. The first one was in 1496, I think, when Prince Isabel from Castilla, the daughter of the Catholic monarch, married to King Manuel of Portugal. But even then, between 1580 and 1640, Portugal and Spain were the same kingdom, and then they were separated again. So our history goes back and forth, sometimes together, sometimes separated.
Thank you. The next question about the trip. What is the usual temperature in this period when the trip is happening, or what is the weather like in general?
Okay, it's still quite pleasant. This is the end of I'm
Of
trying to remember.
October.
Patricia, did last year rain any day? No, right? It was November. It was the
It was in
second week.
November, yeah.
It
So
didn't
it's
rain, right?
it didn't rain.
And it
No, no,
didn't.
no. I think
And it was pleasant. I mean, by the end of the October, beginning of November, I mean, it depends. Barcelona or Madrid. Let's say Madrid is a bit colder than the south, but I can tell you in the south, in Cordoba and Granada, in Sevilla, average temperature could be easily 68, 70 during daytime. Okay, so it's not it's not as hot as it would be in summertime, and it's not as cold as it would be in wintertime. So temperature is quite pleasant, and again, it doesn't rain that much here, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. So if there are more questions about the trip, please feel free to put it. And in the meantime, I'll get back to a few more questions that came for the first part of the lecture. Is it true that Franco punished diplomats who helped to save Jews in World War II?
Okay. Okay, it's a whole story about Franco. What was this is a hard topic. Actually, my grandfather fought during the Civil War against Franco. So, but the truth is that Spain, after the war, Spain had remained neutral. So Spain tried to get some recognition from the rest of the world after World War II. The truth is, at the beginning of World War II, Spain was more on the German side, and then after the years when kept going, Spain changed a little bit his position, and now it's a debate whether Franco himself knew about what was going on or not. This is still a big debate, but I remember, for example, in the case of Angel Sanz Briz in Budapest, when he was there was a proposal to award him as a righteous of the nations in 1966. The Spanish government didn't allow him to go to Israel to receive their award. And that's why the decision was postponed. And it was only like, I think in 1990s when after actually he had passed away. Okay, so because also Spain didn't Franco had a very complicated relationship with the Jews. He accused of Jews of being communist, and this was his main concern. So he always navigated into very troubled waters. So it is not true. No, he wasn't, and then the diplomats were not punished. Actually, Angel Sanbriz, again, he ended up his diplomat career. He was the first ambassador of Spain in China, which was a big milestone, and he ended up with his career with what is the most desirable position within the diplomatic career, which is the Vatican. Okay, so and it was known actually. I think it's 19. The only award or only recognition that Sanbriz got was to have a stamp, post stamp on his memory. Okay, so no, they were not punished. The truth is that they were not big ceremonies. And it was not only Sanbriz, there were several. I mean, there are 9 righteous among the nations in Spain, and 6 of them are diplomats, and still there are some files that are open. But this is something that now, I'm sorry, we are declassifying documents and and learning a lot about. And of course, there are many different opinions. I just have a whole section of my library which is dedicated to all these books here are about this issue, and I can tell you that there are different options you can read from. One saying that Franco, he helped a lot, and others say that Franco would have turned all the Jews over to the Germans. So still a lot of information needs to be processed.
Thank you. And I'll read one last question. And if you have other questions about the tour, you can still put it in the chat while I'm reading this and Moises answers. So what was on the hands of your sister and the other woman, who is, I think, your mother-in-law? No, your
this is
third mother-in-law, sorry, on the photo that you showed about her wedding.
Okay, yeah, I know it doesn't look very good because it's brown. It's like a plaster, but it's called henna. Henna is like a pigment, and the Moroccan women, they paint their hands. Okay, so that's why, and this is and it's like a red color that remains. It's like a non-permanent tattoo. So normally the Moroccan women, they put some henna and they decorate themselves, the hands, sometimes a little bit in the face, and so that's what they had in their hands. It's called henna, Henna, henna.
Okay, and then just one last one. If you know that, were there any Spanish Jews in Iran?
I was reading that on the chat, and this is a topic that I have no I cannot tell, I mean, anything because I'm not familiar with that. Okay, so probably one of these days, if I have time, I would like to go deeper into it. I don't even have any books, and I have plenty, as you can see, but nothing about the Jews. I mean, the relationship about, I know things about the Jews of Iran, the Jews of Mashhad, for example, but nothing that links both Jews of Spain and Jews of Iran. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Moises, for the wonderful presentation. And thank you, Patricia, for sharing the information about the trip with us. And as I mentioned earlier, you will receive all this information tomorrow in your emails. So you can be looking for the email coming from Kesher, and then you can rewatch the presentation, or you can learn more about the trip on the website, which we can actually already put in the chat. Maybe Patricia, if you want to put the website of the trip in the chat. So if someone already
Yes.
wants to
Check
start
it out.
looking into it tonight, you can do it, and then we will send it into your inboxes, hopefully arriving in your inboxes tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. Feel free to reach out to us with questions, and we hope to see you guys very soon again. Our next talk will be on Tuesday, very soon, about the Jews of Iraq, and on Thursday about the Jews of Denmark. So these are our two upcoming events. We are traveling to very, very different parts of the world. So thank you again for all of you for being here today, and we wish you a wonderful rest of the day or good night. And Moises and Patricia, if you want to close with some words from your part, please feel free.
No, thank you so much. And if you have, I just post the website on the chat, and Dora will share also, well, our emails on the tomorrow's email. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to answer any question.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for joining us today, for watching the presentation. And I encourage you to come to Spain and see what you saw in the presentation with your own eyes, which is even better.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.